Welcome back to the Surround Sound Podcast. I am your host, R. Hunter Jr., the truth and not a rumor. On today's show, we listen to some of the very best audio and music from DMX. And then I was able to sneak one in with Black Rob. And it's kind of fitting to me that we honored them as we on the same week that the verdict of the George Floyd, Derek Chauvin case comes out. Because both of these guys were what you would call a hood dude. But they had really, really good hearts. Now, they probably would rob you if they were still in their old element. They probably would assault you if you did something crazy to a family member or friend. But law enforcement is designed to enforce the law. So for what they did, or whatever crime they would have committed, there is a process to repay your debt to society. I think we all understand that. Well, in this George Floyd, Derek Chauvin case, it was kind of weird. Because from what it is reported by many outlets, is that George Floyd was at a restaurant. He wrote a check. The check bounced. Then the police got called on him. And what happened between the police getting called on him and arriving on the scene and him dying is what had the United States in an uproar. What happened in between him passing away and that check bouncing is what shut down the NBA, even after COVID. What happened to him in those minutes, seconds, and hours is what's caused riots in some of our major cities. And that's where we're going to hang out for a second. As I was told earlier today by one of the best producers in Nashville, Tennessee, he told me that Representative Maxine Waters of California said some very interesting words. She said something to the effect of, if there's not a guilty verdict in reference to the police officer, that it's going to be some destruction. It's going to be some things that happen. And that's where I get the name of this portion of the show. See, the name of the sign of the times for this week, the topic is the O.J. Simpson effect. Now, how in the hell did I arrive at the O.J. Simpson effect? Well, this is how. If you remember, and I'm going to define it as well, but if you remember, the main case or the major black case before the O.J. Simpson case was Rodney King. And And in the Rodney King case, once again, this was Rodney King back in the 90s. This was the first time that this type of thing was caught on film. And the officers were exonerated completely. And California showed up and showed out. South Central was ablaze. And then what, a year and a half, 2 years after? Now remember, it was white cops and a black man, Rodney King. Now a couple of years after, you got this black man, prominent black man, in O.J. Simpson, that kills his, that was thought to have killed his white ex-wife. O.J. walked free. That's why I call this the O.J. Simpson effect. O.J.'s case, in my estimation, was directly affected by the fact that South Central was burned down. L.A. County could not afford for that same thing to happen again. That thought process that I have has no bearing on whether I feel that OJ is innocent or guilty. It's just, I just see a correlation right there. That leads to my next point, mob mentality. Justice in no way should be served in such a way where non-jurors have any part in whether a person or persons are innocent or guilty. They just shouldn't. That O.J. Simpson case was deemed the case of the century. The George Floyd murder stopped the NBA, stopped NHL, it stopped baseball, it stopped a matter of things. The NBA was preparing to postpone games if indeed this verdict was not the one that they thought. I think what we saw was the O.J. Simpson effect showing its face. Did I think Chauvin was guilty? I got 2 eyes, and right now I have 4. So I saw what happened. So the interesting thing here is not whether he was guilty or not. It's not whether George Floyd was in the wrong and deserved to die. It's that black people possibly had to riot to get a certain verdict to be true. For Super Troy, from Matasha Nabarro, I am the host of the Surround Sound Podcast, R. Hunter Jr., the truth and not a rumor. And in the words of the scholar Jerry Springer, be good to yourself and each other.